One must imagine Sisyphus happy is a quote from Albert Camus, but you've probably seen it in the comment section of a meme video like this. But who is Sisyphus? Why did he get punished? And most importantly, why would he be happy rolling a boulder up a hill for all eternity? To answer all of these questions, we have to first learn about the story of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was the first king of Ephyra, now known as Corinth. Although a brilliant leader that brought his nation lots of wealth, he was also an evil dictator, just thinking of himself. This highlighted when he killed visitors from other nations bearing gifts, and later marrying his own niece. This behavior, of course, got the attention of the gods. They were angered to hear all this. But what they didn't know was that Sisyphus had many tricks up his sleeve, coupled with extreme confidence. The conflict started when Zeus took the nymph, Aegina, flying away with her in the form of an eagle. Aegina's father, the river god Asopus, panicked and followed their trail all the way to Ephyra, where he encountered Sisyphus in his castle. This is where Sisyphus had his first plan set into motion. He made a deal in exchange of the god making a river flow through the city. The king told Asopus which way Zeus had taken his daughter. When Zeus heard of this, he was furious at the king. He asked Thanatos, the god of death, to trap Sisyphus in the underworld so he wouldn't cause any more trouble for Zeus. But Sisyphus, a clever man, had another trick up his sleeve. When being chained up, he asked Thanatos, "Could you show me how the chains work?" Thanatos, thinking nothing of it, showed Sisyphus how it worked. The king used this to instead bind Thanatos in the chains, later escaping from the underworld. With Thanatos not being able to do his job, no one on Earth could die, and the world plunged into chaos. This instead angered the god of war, Ares, since the battles were no longer fun to watch. He decided to free Thanatos. Sisyphus knew that it would soon all be over, but once again, he was one step ahead. Before dying, he asked his wife to throw his decaying body in the river Asopus earlier made. His soul eventually washed up in the river Styx. When he was back with the dead, he approached Persephone, queen of the dead, and told her that his own wife hadn't given him a proper burial. Persephone granted him life, to go back to the living and punish his own wife. Of course, like every single time, Sisyphus didn't hold up his promise. Now he had twice escaped death by outsmarting the gods. They promised that there wouldn't be a third time. When Hermes, the messenger, dragged Sisyphus back to Hades, Zeus and Persephone, he had thought that he was smarter than the gods. But the gods had the last laugh. Sisyphus' punishment was an easy task, it seemed. He was to roll up a massive boulder up a hill, but once he got close to the top, the boulder would roll all the way down, and all Sisyphus could do was to start over and over, forever. How come this story is the most popular one? Surely there are more gruesome punishments from the gods in these Greek stories. It's because this one has disturbing amounts of familiarity. Why would he be happy with his punishment? To answer that, let's break down the man behind the quote, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy," and the philosophy that led to this powerful tale. Albert Camus was a French philosopher born in Algeria in 1913. He was born into poverty and lost his father at a young age. Camus learned that life is a series of challenges and that we must face and confront them. Some other challenges he faced included tuberculosis, leading him to become acutely aware of mortality, which further led him on the path of existential crises and a search for meaning. Growing up in Algeria and then living through World War II in France, Albert grappled with inherent meaninglessness and randomness of the world around him. The sudden, irrational violence of war made the absurdity of the world ever more clear to Camus. So let us delve deeper into his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. The idea of the absurd, which we mentioned before, is from Camus' perspective the conflict between our desire for meaning and the meaninglessness of the universe. So just as Sisyphus' task lacked any ultimate purpose or end, he argued that the same could be said for the human experience. But, rather than running away from the absurd, Camus tells us to confront it directly. We should revolt against our absurd condition by embracing life, creating our own meaning and living authentically. There, we can find happiness. Sisyphus has no concept of a better day or an afterlife. His experiences are tied to the here and now. Sisyphus embraces the task. and gives it his all, revolting against nihilism and despair. This allows him to be the master of his own story. He is free, even in his punishment. Sisyphus is the hero in this story, a tragic hero at that. Camus imagines Sisyphus smiling as he goes down the mountain to start his task over again, and gives us the picture that there's joy and contentment in embracing the struggles of life, even though at the end of the day it's meaningless. How could we apply this in our own lives? We could just deny the unreasonable world. This is the most common way to accept the world around us. Everyone makes up their own rules, their own goals. An example of this is religion, finding peace, knowing there's an afterlife. Or monetary gain, finding peace, knowing you'll have financial stability when you retire. But Camus rejected this idea, thinking, one day we will be free. Instead, we should recognize that we are free at every moment, that heaven is on earth, rejecting the idea that one day we will understand the world, we will overcome death, or be happy one day. It's a lesson to remember. We must instead live our lives as much as possible, rather than as good as possible, because what is good is just another metric we humans made up. We don't chase after things for the heck of it, it's because of the experience of it. In the same way for Sisyphus, it's not about getting to the top, it's about the satisfaction of the task while you're doing it. Our lives are not far from similar to Sisyphus' punishment. If we are striving for money, when will it be enough? If we are striving for happiness, when will we be happy enough? What about power? It is never enough. It's just an endless race with no finish line. But that's okay, as long as you live in the moment.